If Israel hits civilians, that's genocide. If it tries to save civilians, that's somehow genocide as well.
Expecting that from the world is a fact. We knew that it's gonna come. I would try to make sure that the Gazan people would leave the territory, so to guard them. I had convinced almost everybody beside the Egyptians. They butchered our babies, women, men, kids, soldiers, whatsoever. They penetrated our territory, and we have the absolute right, to fight back. And I think that Israel will overcome, will prevail. The Israeli spirit or the Jewish spirit whatsoever, is there. And most of all, we don't really have a choice. There's no one else that we can go to.
Hello, welcome back to the Brendan O'Neill Show with me, Brendan O'Neill, and my special guest this week, Yossi Cohen. Yossi, welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
It's great to have you on. You are hands down the highest ranking intelligence official we've ever had on the podcast. For non-Israeli listeners who might not know, you served as the head of Mossad, the legendary Israeli intelligence agency, having worked your way up to the top over many years. And you served in many operations, and you've now written a book about your experience and about your views and about your thoughts on where Israel might go next. It's called The Sword of Freedom, Israel, Mossad, and the Secret War. And it is an intriguing read. I highly recommend it to listeners. But I guess the first question I want to ask you, Yossi, is it difficult for a former intelligence official, a top-ranking spy, a man of subterfuge and secrecy and so on, is it difficult for someone like that to write a book about his life? I guess there's a lot that's not in the book, which we might never know about, but there's a lot that is in it. How do you decide what you're allowed to put in, what you should leave out?
All right. There is first of all, it's quite hard. I have to admit. You can't really reveal the absolute secrets and the methods that Mossad is using. So you have to go, a little bit around the bush. You have to hide many true details. You can reveal the sources that you've recruited. You can't reveal the places that you've been to. You can't reveal, many details. Nevertheless, I was trying to put some lights on and how do we operate? How do you feel when you are an operative at the Mossad? And I've done that, I think for the last 3 years. It's a hurdle to pass inside our own Israeli security and defense community, because we have to go and to approve the book, in so many different layers, like at the Mossad itself, and then we have a censor, and then the Ministry of Defense, and then the National Security Council, and each one of them is like being more, let's say, orthodox than the other one, and it cuts more and more pieces of the book. So in the end of the day, it's interesting. It squeezes your, I would say, enthusiastic plan to make sure that you will be very that the book will be interesting, and I will shed lights on the things that I want to really to discuss.
Yeah, well, it definitely does that. And it's a really interesting account. So you are first approached by Mossad in the 1980s when you were very young, and you describe, you say it's not quite as sexy as someone coming up to you in a bar with the whiff of Chanel perfume and asking you to become a spy. It's not quite like that. It was more of a kind of routine phone call. And you talk about that experience and right through to when you became director of Mossad in 2016. You subsequently stepped down. And so it's a long life of spying, I guess, to use that, that word. One thing I wanted to ask you is about Mossad's international reputation, because I've always found it so intriguing, because on the one hand, Mossad is held up as this demonic force. It's behind every plot in the world. It's responsible for every ill. You'll be aware of all the conspiracy theories swirling around Mossad.
Yeah, of course.
Every time something happens in the world, people say, "Oh, Mossad did it." It's really ridiculous. But at the same time, Mossad is seen as well as a very intriguing, successful outfit. So there are now TV shows and films about Mossad agents and the fact that they sometimes lie low in countries for years and years and years before they strike. So there's this kind of double-edged approach in the West, where on the one hand, Mossad is seen as quite sinister, and on the other hand, is seen as a very successful intelligence agency. As the director, you must be aware of, when you were director, you must have been aware of that reputation. What does it make you think when you see commentary like that?
Well, I am aware of this kind of a whatever. I mean, keeping the Mossad as a concept higher than the rumors and the conspiracies around. And practically, I think that the Mossad has a kind of a very colorful job. I mean, it is. I mean, it's being a spy, as we call it, or being an operative. I mean, at the Mossad, I mean, leading. I mean, this kind of dairy operations, I have to say, risky operations, I have to say, is something that we do because we have to. And many ask us, or many ask me, as you, Brandon, said right now, um, what are how do you straighten the equation between what actually you did and what people are saying that you did? Um, and you will never know. I mean, the the thing about us, as it is in the book, I mean, you can reveal so little about the Mossad's real job and about how do we do and how do we operate, but you do see the results. So we can discuss results, but we leave it down there to the imagination of the audience to calculate how did this happen. I mean, when you see a motorcycle, I mean, being whatever plotted in some whatever a booby trap, or when you see kind of a um, pager in Lebanon Hezbollah being exploded, and when you see this beautiful intelligence that we have getting into the generals of Iran's whatever bedrooms and stuff like that, into their proper like directions. You say, okay, I mean, it needs a lot of work. I mean, how did they do that? So practically, I can tell you, I mean, as a title, that I cannot really straighten this equation. I mean, there is the reality and there is the imagination. You need a lot of imagination to create the reality, though. I mean, in order to create a good operation, I mean, you need to be very imaginative. And we're trying to be. We're trying to penetrate, I mean, behind the enemy lines. I mean, Mossad is operating only behind the enemy lines. I mean, we do not do Israel at all. This is our Shin Bet, or our, yeah, like yours in England, or in like the MI5 or FBI in the USA, and similarities like that. But we do operate behind the enemy lines, I mean, every day. And sending operatives like Israelis, good Israelis, as we call them, blue and white, like our colors of our flag, is something very daring, very risky. So what do we do? First, we do understand that we don't have a choice, that the state of Israel is under risk, and we have to make sure that the state of Israel will exist. As simple as that. Since the jungle that we live in, someone called it the villa in the jungle. I mean, the jungle is crazy. And you see that not because of terror organization only, not because of Hamas and Hezbollah and Jihad Islam and so forth, and Hashd Shabi in Iraq and other Shiite or Sunni organizations that are trying to attack Israel. It is about countries trying to annihilate openly the state of Israel. Like Iran declared again, the annihilation of the state of Israel, something that we take very seriously. And when you don't have a choice, and when you know that you have to operate, you have to be super imaginative in order to operate rightly. And you are getting there under, I have to admit, huge risk into these kind of countries, penetrating inside these territories, gathering the information and the intel that you need. The other part, the conspiracies, like from the tsunami at the time, or what was it? The pandemic and the COVID, and I mean everything that goes wrong or everything that goes right. Maybe that was the Mossad conspiracy. I mean, people that are blamed to be working with us that have never did all this kind of evilness or whatever. Maybe it is part of the imagination only. I mean, we can't really straighten that up because we don't say what we don't do, and more than that, we don't take any responsibility of the things we do. So we leave it out there for the audience imagination mainly.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because you're not quite in a position where you can just put out a press release in response to every crazy theory. You have to just kind of sit back and, I guess, let
Right.
it wash over you.
But
Um,
if I can add to that,
yeah,
Brendan, I mean, the concept helps the Mossad a lot because the proper job that we do is known to the countries that we are being disrupting their capabilities. Like, let's say Iran, for example.
yeah,
And I
mm,
really want the Iranians to believe that I'm all over, and we are all over. I want now Hezbollah to believe that I can go and penetrate any of the bedroom, any of the doors. I mean, any site, any command room. I mean, I can go, and that's okay. That serves the Mossad's image, I believe. I mean, will keep them a little bit more hesitant before trying to hit or hurt the state of Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to the future Netflix series about the Pages operation. I'm sure someone's going to make that film at some point.
Being approached already by some.
Right. That's good to hear. Um, I want to ask you about 7th of October, and your opening chapter is called The Day the World Changed, and it gives a very stark description of what happened on that day. Everyone is familiar with what happened, but it's always good to be reminded about how murderous that assault on Israel was by Hamas and its allies. Um, but you talk also quite frankly about how Israel was kind of caught napping a little bit and was not ready for this and possibly should have seen it coming. And one of the suggestions you make is that because there was a complete withdrawal of Israel and the settlements in Gaza from 2005 onwards, that it's possible you didn't really know what was being discussed in Gaza, you didn't know what was being planned, what was being plotted, and therefore, just over the border, people could be plotting the most murderous assault in modern Israel's history, and there was no awareness of it. What do you think was the problem there? Was it the absence of Mossad in Gaza that created that crisis, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important and large question, or very wide question. I think that if we start with the disengagement in 2005, and we will describe it from then on, yeah, Israel's forces disengaged from Gaza, but Israel as a country did not. And let me explain it in one word. I mean, we continued to work in open passages in between Israel and Gaza till October 6th, meaning that Israelis could not go into Gaza, i.e., our Shin Bet, again, our FBI cannot go and do what they do normally in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. But the other way around, I mean, the Gazan people and maybe some undercover as normal Gazan people can cross into the state of Israel daily. So before October 7th, one day before the October War, I mean, the second October War that we had, 30,000 Gazan people have entered Israel daily. And part of them we knew, I mean, now we know, we're collecting intelligence from our kibbutzim, from the settlements on the Israeli side, from cities from the Israeli side that we've been working in. And I think that when I said that I do not agree with the disengagement, that's the part I do not agree with. It's either you disengage or you engage. And we had been hybrid on that sense. Result was, I ran into the future. I mean, from 2006 to 2008, when Hamas is taking over Gaza Strip completely, I mean, butchering its own nation. I mean, like Palestinians have been killed by Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority was kicked out of Gaza brutally again. And now Hamas as a terror organization is controlling the entire 365 square meters of Gaza. On that sense, we had lost contact, physical contact with Gaza. The problem was that Gaza was concepted, or if I may, it was perceived as part of the Palestinian Authority, or as part as the same method that has been applied at the West Bank. But at the West Bank you can go. At the West Bank you can go and arrest people even with the Palestinian Authority together. But in Gaza you cannot. So Gaza, for me, after 2013, 14, 15, when I was National Security Advisor, I was realizing for the first time how poor the level of intelligence is and how low our operational capabilities. And then in 2016, I offered to the Prime Minister to participate in that intelligence war and in that collective capabilities inside Gaza Strip, as Mossad is capable of doing it in countries that you cannot go with your Israeli passport, like Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and so forth. But I was refused, unfortunately. So methods that you see beautifully activated, even last year, either in Iran or Syria or in Lebanon, Hezbollah, we didn't have that in Gaza, unfortunately.
Yeah, the section of the book where you describe your desire, your proposal to have some presence in Gaza in order to gather information, and the turning down of that is a very dramatic part of the book and incredibly eye-opening as well. I want to ask you about something that happened then once the war starts. So 7th of October happens, Israel goes to war with Hamas. One of the most intriguing parts of the book is the efforts made by you and others to open a humanitarian corridor through Egypt into the Sinai, where many Gazan people could have gone and been saved. And your efforts were ultimately thwarted. President El-Sisi in Egypt was not keen. It's a story that really needs to be told, because you will be very aware that, the narrative in sections of society in the West is that Israel doesn't care about people in Gaza. It's just huddled them all together so it can commit genocide on them, when the truth of the matter is that strenuous efforts were made to allow civilians to leave. Describe that experience to us a little bit, how frustrating it was, and what the consequences were for Israel that you were unable ultimately to secure that exodus of civilians.
Right. Modern wars are perceived to be so much difficult than in the past, because we do care about civilians being part of the territories that we have to clean, either from armies or from terrorists, because it is a kind of a combination. Like in Hezbollah in Lebanon, and like in Hamas in Gaza, civilians and terrorists are living together. I mean, they use all civilian facilities like hospitals and their houses, and they confiscate whatever they want in order to make their presence hidden from us and from others. I mean, to be in a position to attack them. And being aware of that, it's not like the wars that we had in the past, like in North America, in North Africa, or in Europe. I mean, when you didn't really care. I mean, Berlin was completely bombed by, and no one did ask. I mean, what about the citizens? So Russia never questioned. I mean, what do we do about this city or that city? Or when the Nazis attacked London at the Blitz, I mean, they never thought about citizens. I mean, the rules of the war were totally different, and now we're trying to guard dramatically the rules of the war. And I was aware of that when I entered the prime minister's office at, I mean, a few days after, maybe a few hours after the war started on October 7th. And I told him, I know what's going to happen. We're going to take the blame. I mean, I know that the world is going to crucify us for not taking care of the Gazan people like they did in the past. In the past, I mean, we paid. I mean, we brought some foreign currencies. I mean, we have convinced other nations, I mean, to help the Gazan people separately from Hamas. And I personally have been crucified, I mean, by the Israeli media of doing it currently. But nevertheless, I mean, I told him what's going to happen. So I told him, you do the war as long as you can with your IDF, with the Shin Bet, whatever it is, the Air Force, whatever is needed. I will try to make sure that the Gazan people would leave the territory, so to guard them. Okay, I mean, to these that are not involved in terrorism, that they will have a tilt door to escape somewhere. And I offered him that plan to travel around the world, I mean, to convince leaders, mainly Egypt and other GCC countries, maybe backed by the USA or India or Japan or any international body. I mean, to make sure that the Palestinians of Gaza would leave the territory safely to the Sinai Peninsula, not permanently, only for a few months, for a few days, whatever. And then they would live there in a safe haven. And when the war is over, they can come back. Well, the territory eventually will be claimed by us from Hamas. It will make two important things. I mean, one, you will not be hitting these that are not involved as civilians, which is important to me dramatically. Number two, you will ease the way to fight. Because if the streets will be evacuated only, I mean, from all citizens that will be like occupied only by Hamas terrorists, I mean, it will be easy to define who is doing what. Um, I had convinced almost everybody beside the Egyptians. And when the President Sisi have heard about that, and he did, because I've communicated directly with his national security advisors, and I offered this idea, they refused, and he even gave an open interview or an open statement. I mean, I remember the day because Chancellor Scholz was there at the time, and together with him, he said there is this whatever wrong idea that the Palestinians could cross Rafah passage into Egypt, even not permanently, and I do not agree to that concept. I feel sorry that they hadn't. They told me in Egypt that this would create a kind of a revolution in Egypt, like a million and a million and a half Palestinians for like a tent city, whatever it is, will create a revolution. You can't argue with that when they're telling you, no, I thought that this could have saved a lot of sorrow on the Gazan people's life.
Yeah, absolutely. That comes through very clearly in the book that as I was reading it, I was egging you on to success, even though I know it didn't succeed, because it would have saved a lot of sorrow from Gaza. It seems to me often that in the eyes of some people in the West, everything Israel does is bad. So if Israel bombs Gaza because it's in pursuit of Hamas and civilians die, then that is referred to as a war crime. But then if Israel tries to take those civilians out of harm's way, either by moving them around Gaza itself or through your proposal to take them out of Gaza, then that's also seen as a war crime. So if Israel hits civilians, that's genocide. If it tries to save civilians, that's somehow genocide as well. And the reason I was thinking that is because there's a line in your book that really leapt out at me, which is where you say that Israeli leaders are often not very good at explaining why we're doing what we're doing, or what we're doing it for. But then you make the point that in some ways it wouldn't even make much difference if you were excellent at it, because there is this preordained narrative amongst many in the West, growing numbers, sadly, that Israel is just a demonic entity and its war in Gaza is a crime against humanity. And I thought that was such an interesting line, because it's something I've thought myself, that there's very little, in fact, that Israel can do to shake this mindset. How have you seen that mindset grow since 7th of October, and how much does that worry leaders in Israel, that it seems that there are significant numbers in the West that have turned against the Jewish nation?
Right. I mean, first, it is worrying a lot. I mean, I'm very much worried about that, like you are. And I think that we had conducted a justified war. I mean, we had been attacked brutally by a terror organization. I mean, designated terror organization that is designated all over the world as Hamas. And we had countered them inside Gaza Strip for a good reason. They butchered our babies, women, men, kids, soldiers whatsoever. They penetrated our territory, and we have the absolute right, I mean, to fight back. Um, Expecting that from the world is a fact. We knew that it's going to come. I told the prime minister he knew that that's going to come. That was part of the first plan. And it doesn't release us from the needs, I'll have to admit, of trying to explain that and telling and showing our side, and the videos that probably you've seen a bit, but I'm not sure if many did. I mean, of the atrocities. I mean, there is like the 42 shocking video that we have communicated to the world, but people do understand to a limit that we have the right to fight back, but it takes very short time before the U-turn in the world's opinion about the state of Israel will happen, and it was very short, like expected, as I said. Okay, there are billions that do not like the state of Israel. I mean, there are even fewer, but not many, that would like to see the state of Israel disappeared or annihilating. Um, we're there to stay, and we will fight for our country. And I know that we're losing bit by bit some territories in the West that had been in our favor. I know that this week, I'm in New York now, there's going to be another vote on at the UN. If or not, I mean, they agree that Israel conducted or conducting genocide in Gaza. We do not conduct any genocide, but someone has to explain that beside an ambassador here. I mean, we have to have a good and very big system that will explain the stand of the state of Israel, and this is something I don't see. And unfortunately, we have so many people that are in favor of the state of Israel. There are so many people that are connected to either Israelis or the Jewish communities. There are so many millions are. I mean, around the world, maybe dozens of millions are, but you don't see them. You don't see the conferences that the prime minister should have done with leaders around the world, like consolidating their opinion into one mindset, telling them this is what has happened, this is what we do, and I will update you twice a week or twice a month telling you, stay with us, stand with the state of Israel, do not boycott us. Not in the UK, not in France, not in Italy or China or elsewhere. I mean, we're doing what we have to do. We're not running any atrocities on their side. We do not conduct genocide or human atrocities, and we're trying to keep the war very high level of under the international law, which is very hard. But yes, um, to the sorrow of everybody, of the state of Israel, of course, dramatically, I've heard the prime minister speaking about that yesterday, and he said there will have to be kind of autocracy. I mean, I don't think that he wants to be an autocracy um, by all means, but he says, yeah, I mean, there is a risk that the state of Israel, because of what we do, will be isolated. And I think that he doesn't have to speak to the people of Israel. He has to speak to the world, or he has to use people like me, or people like you, or people like that are in favor of the state of Israel dramatically, and tell us, I mean, create a kind of a concept or kind of a group of explanators, whatever. I mean, you can do that. I mean, communicators that can say, this is the reality for you to judge. But the reality is not there. And the concept on the negative concepts are brutally down there. And the state of Israel suffers from all that.
Absolutely. I did want to ask you where you think things stand between Israel and Iran at the moment, because one of the ops that you are best known for, and which you write about in the book, is the Mossad's incredibly daring theft of Iran's nuclear archives records from a warehouse in Tehran. I mean, talk about Netflix series. That's got to be another one on the books. An incredibly daring operation. People thought you were crazy when you proposed it. Some people did, but it was very successful, and Israel gained an enormous amount of information about the truth of Iran's nuclear ambitions, and that subsequently now led to the swift assaults on Iran's nuclear facilities that we saw a few months ago. Um, why did you think that operation in particular was so important, and what do you think the consequences have been for Iran? It seems to me that Iran has, to a certain extent, been put back in its box by events of the past few years.
Correct. Correct. I think that the importance of this operation, like all operations, is not the operation itself, but the intelligence that we've gathered from within the Iranian deepest secret, discrete system. At the archive, we've learned something that we've suspected and we didn't know for sure, that Iran eventually is conducting or conducted a huge national program to reach a nuclear bomb. I mean, to be more specific, I mean, they have conducted a kind of a plan, I mean, to create 5 nuclear warheads based on what they will learn, based on what they were trying to learn, based on knowledge that they received from other countries, like from Pakistan and others too. And all this was shared with the nations, first with the P5+1. Physically, I have delivered it to the head of the CIA, MI6, and the French, the Germans, and China and Russia, and then the IEA. I think the magnitude of the level of intelligence that we have received and learned about Iran brought us to the point that in June 2025, when the IAEA in Vienna, the International Atomic Agency in Vienna, eventually declared at the Board of Governors that Iran violates its rules, and therefore that was the first green light for the attack. Meaning that the things that we had found in 2018 in the archive that we've shared with the Americans and other allies, like in the UK, as I said before, and learned to be a problem that has to be cleaned out by the IEA with Iran, and when Iran refused to do that, and that was the absolute understanding that Iran is not willing to come clean with its sites, scientists, scientific work and knowledge that they have. And more than that, they want to go back to the same agreement that they had in 2015 under the Obama's administration, when the JCPOA was signed against our will. And now the big question would be, why is it then that Biden's administration, I mean, for the last 4 years, did not sign or re-sign the agreement? The reason is the archive. He couldn't sign the agreement because the IEA is telling him, no, Mr. President, before you re-sign the agreement, Iran has to come clean about the evidence that we have, new evidence that we have, sites and scientists and scientific work that was discovered by the Israelis, and they have to explain what's in it. And Iran, of course, doesn't want to do that. There is a lot or many things that we're trying to hide, to hid from us, and that was discovered in the archive. So the importance of the archive is the level of intelligence that we've learned. We put them naked in the streets, telling everybody, you see what they really do, you see what they really mean, you see what they're really trying to achieve, and we cannot let that happen. So the outcome is this very magnificent attack, combined attack with Israeli Air Force, Mossad, and the American Air Force. I mean, the B-2s that have completed the job with the MOP, with the master of all bomb, or mother of all bombs. And I'm very satisfied that we did. And I think that there is, above all that, a new absolute message that tells the Iranian that believed that while lying all the way to the agreement, they are immune from any military attack. And now they do know that they're not immune anymore, and we can come again. So if we have learned, and we will try to understand what were the remaining on the Iranian side, what was left that was not destroyed. I think that dramatically we've destroyed it, but let's say there is some, or there are some remaining other sites that we didn't see. We will keep on learning it. And the minute we will find some, I would say, worrying sites or activity, Iran do know today, they do understand today, we can come again. We've destroyed their air defense and their very important national assets inside Tehran. I mean, we've entered their all sites and apartments of their filthiest leadership, and we can do much more. So Iran should be aware of that, and that's a good and new updated concept.
Okay, Yossi, my final question for you is just on Israel's future. I mean, you make a really convincing case in the book that in the modern era, wars are rarely won outright or lost outright. They tend to fizzle out into kind of negotiated settlements and or so on. But you make the point that Israel has to win its wars because it's surrounded by hostile elements who dream of its destruction. And it's a very unusual position that the Jewish state finds itself in. You've been close with Benjamin Netanyahu over the years. He made you his national security advisor, and you've advised him since 7th of October. There are people, you will know this, there are people who say that it's time for Netanyahu possibly to go. Maybe there needs to be a fresh leadership. But just looking at all those questions in the round, how confident are you that Israel will come through this current dark moment, replenished possibly? And is there now space for a new leadership to take Israel in a different direction?
I'm very optimistic about that, Brandon, and I think that Israel will overcome, will prevail. I mean, all these difficulties. I mean, I know it is a different level of difficulty that we're facing. I mean, for the last 2 years. Nevertheless, I mean, the Israeli spirit or the Jewish spirit whatsoever, I mean, is there. Now, I mean, and most of all, I mean, we don't really have a choice. I mean, there's no one else that we can go to. It's not that we can open a membrane or a humanitarian corridor and we will go now back to Poland and we will take our bags and we go back to Warsaw. I mean, this is not the case. That's our country. We'll fight for it, and we'll have to fight for it. In Israel now, the ingredient that is missing is unity. Because it was like, I mean, prior that October 7th, I mean, we had many, many, many terrible things that had happened inside the Israeli society, like the judiciary reforms and a lot of very bloody, I would say, and not literally, but I mean, people were speaking from their heart and blood, for against, I mean, this and against that. I mean, two camps, like they were fighting each other. Thank God, not physically, but they were fighting each other. I mean, in their opinions. And I think that what we need, I mean, majorly, I mean, after October 7th, is kind of a unification of the Israeli assets. I mean, first, so to overcome what has happened to us and to make sure that this will not happen again, because I mean, in light of the enemies that we see around us, not everybody has disappeared, and even if they did, maybe new will come and new updated enemies will show up. So we have to make sure that Israel always win. So to win a war, you have to have a unified country. I mean, this is the secret of Israel for the last 78 years. And the secret has to be very well kept. I mean, we have to work together, to counter our enemies and not working one against each other. And I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is not in a position to do that. He's not the one to unify the country again. And more than that, I would ask the people of Israel, what do you want? I.e., let's go for another round of elections and let the people choose. And I truly hope that the leader that will come out, I don't see it or him yet, or she yet. I truly want to believe that the leader that will come out there will dramatically be busy, not with decrying or criticizing the other side of the political map, but saying, let's unify around the flag and around our values and create Israel even more beautiful than it was so far.
Yossi, thank you very much.
Thank you.